you enjoyed having these violent fantasies or thoughts.
Did you ever shoot any of these girls?
Shoot.
Yeah, with a gun?
I get no kicks out of shooting.
All right.
Behind cold stares and chilling confessions lie some of the most disturbing interviews ever recorded. From Mark Riebe's explosive denial to Stephen Port's emotionless admissions, these killers didn't just commit horrific crimes, they disrespected their victims, even in death. This is a journey into the darkest minds and the most unsettling interviews ever. Let's begin.
A weird definition of what's crazy and what's legally crazy. Trust me, I was not normal at the time.
In the early 90s, New York was haunted by a quiet, awkward man with a terrifying secret. His name was Joel Rifkin, someone who looked like your average neighbor, but behind that ordinary face was a serial killer. Joel killed at least 9 women, maybe even more. And when he finally spoke about it, what he said in interviews was so cold and emotionless, it left people stunned. A loving family adopted Joel Rifkin as a baby. He struggled with learning disabilities, got bullied in school, and never really fit in. By the time he was an adult, he had dropped out of college and worked as a landscaper. But under all that, something dark was growing. Joel started picking up intimate workers and killing them. His first known victim was Heidi Balch in 1989. Joel brought her to his home, where he took her life and tried to prevent authorities from identifying her by removing her key features. He hid clues in different places, some in forests, some near rivers. For 4 years, he continued his secret activities, with police unaware that one person was responsible for everything. But on June 28, 1993, everything changed. State troopers noticed Joel's pickup truck driving without a license plate. When they tried to stop him, he led them on a high-speed chase. He eventually crashed. What they found in his truck was horrifying: the body of his last victim, Tiffany Bresciani, wrapped in a tarp. That was the end of his freedom. When questioned, Joel Rifkin gave chilling responses. He claimed he never planned the killings, but once he started, he couldn't stop. In interviews, he showed little to no remorse. He explained his crimes as if he were talking about chores, cold, disconnected, and almost casual. What made it worse was his total lack of emotion. No guilt, no sorrow, just facts. In 1994, Joel was found guilty of 9 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 203 years to life in prison.
He knew when he killed Tiffany Bresciani that he was a serial killer. He knew it.
Authorities believed he could be responsible for up to 17 deaths. He was so infamous that prison officials kept him in solitary confinement for over 4 years to avoid chaos among inmates. Years later, during an interview, when asked why he did it, Joel shrugged. He didn't try to blame anyone or justify it. His answers were disturbingly simple: cold logic, no empathy, and even a joke about how long it took to tamper with the body remains. The lack of humanity was terrifying. Rifkin also mentioned chilling and detailed memories of 2 victims known only as Victim 6 and Victim 9. Rifkin recalls what they looked like, how they died, and exactly where he left their bodies. Investigators had long struggled to put names to these women, but Rifkin's precise confessions gave them the missing pieces. Even at his old age, he remembered roads, neighborhoods, even small landmarks. For many watching or reading his interviews, the worst part wasn't the number of victims. It wasn't the method. It was the way he spoke, like human lives meant nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a man listing memories like a grocery list. Joel Rifkin isn't just remembered for his crimes, but for one of the most disrespectful and emotionless interviews with a serial killer of all time. Next is the disturbing case of a killer who couldn't even remember all the lives he destroyed, and didn't seem to care.
Oh man, I loved her. I forget her name. Oh wait, I think it was Ruth.
On a cold evening, a man sat there in a cold prison cell, calmly sketching the faces of women no one had been looking for. Faces of victims he remembered in terrifying detail. Behind that quiet demeanor was the deadliest serial killer in American history. Samuel Little didn't just take lives, he erased them from existence, often targeting those the world had already forgotten. For decades, he moved from state to state, killing with ease, leaving no fingerprints, no traces, just silence. And when he finally spoke, The confession sent shivers across the nation. Little was born in Reynolds, Georgia in 1940. He had a troubled start. His mother, who struggled through a difficult adolescence, abandoned him. He was raised by his grandmother in Ohio and struggled in school. As a child, he began having dark fantasies, one that would grow into something monstrous. By his young age, he was collecting crime magazines, obsessed with images of women being strangled. That obsession turned into action and soon into a killing spree that lasted over 30 years. Between 1970 and 2005, Samuel traveled across the country, killing women in silence. Most of his victims were marginalized, intimate workers, addicts, and women of color. He knew the system wouldn't look for them. For decades, he slipped through the cracks, even though he was arrested multiple times for crimes like theft and assault. He was never held accountable for his most serious actions. In 2012, everything changed. Little was arrested on a substance charge in Kentucky, and a DNA test linked him to 3 unsolved killings in Los Angeles. That was the break detectives had been waiting for. In 2014, Samuel Little went to trial. The evidence was overwhelming: DNA, witness testimonies, and survivor accounts. He was convicted of taking 3 lives and sentenced to life in prison without parole. But here's where things got chilling. From his prison cell, Samuel began to talk. He confessed to dozens of deaths, one after another. And in interviews, he would draw sketches of his victims from memory, smiling, reminiscing as if describing old friends. It wasn't a regret, it was pride. When asked why he killed, Samuel never gave a clear answer. Some say it was about power. Others believed it was his childhood trauma, mixed with deep psychological disorders.
Did you ever shoot any of these girls?
Shoot.
Yeah, with a gun?
I get no kicks out of shooting.
All right, good.
But in his interviews, he showed no guilt or sorrow, only satisfaction. And finally, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In interviews from his prison cell, Samuel looked relaxed, even cheerful. He spoke in detail about how he chose his victims, how he strangled them, and how he left their bodies behind. He laughed, he joked, and at times he seemed proud of what he had done. It was beyond chilling. It was disrespectful to every life he took. Viewers who watched his confessions were stunned, not just by the crimes, but by his total lack of humanity. There were no tears, no apologies, only a man who treated killing like a hobby. The world will never forget his name because his evil exposed the gaps in the justice system and the lives it failed to protect. Next, we uncover a chilling case where the killer treated the woods like his hunting ground and his victims like trophies.
I did it. I'm confessing to a murder on camera.
Gary Michael Hilton, a man whose name still sends chills through families across the Southeast. From Florida to North Carolina, his crimes were brutal, heartless, and cold. He wasn't just a killer. He was a serial killer who preyed on innocent people enjoying peaceful time in national forests. And what's worse, during interviews, his lack of remorse was chilling. It all started in October 2007 when John and Irene Bryant, a retired couple from North Carolina, disappeared while hiking in the Pisgah and Nantahala national forests. These were gentle, kind people, nature lovers just enjoying their golden years. When they didn't return, their family feared the worst, but no one could imagine what happened. As days passed, search teams combed the forests. Then came a horrifying clue: a blood-stained trail and some personal items belonging to the Bryants. Soon after, federal authorities got involved. The FBI, U.S. Forest Service, local sheriffs, and SBI worked together to find the truth. Their hard work finally paid off. Evidence pointed to one man, Gary Michael Hilton, and what followed was a terrifying discovery. Hilton confessed. He admitted he kidnapped and killed Irene Bryant in Pisgah National Forest. Then he used a firearm to kill John Bryant in Nantahala National Forest. What made the situation even darker was that this wasn't his only crime. Hilton had already been sentenced to death in Florida for the killing of Cheryl Dunlap, and he was serving life for killing Meredith Emerson in Georgia. It was clear this man had been hunting innocent people across state lines for years. Hilton's motive was as disturbing as his actions. He targeted hikers and campers, often older victims, and killed them for money.
She almost wet my hands. She damn sure did. I lost control of both of them, both the knife and the bat.
Robbery was just part of it. He stole from his victims after ending their lives in the most violent way possible. Before the interview began, Gary Michael Hilton warned, be prepared for a whole different breed of cat. Throughout the conversation, he showed no guilt, only cold, sometimes sarcastic responses, as he calmly admitted to killing all his victims, leaving investigators sickened. After 17 years of silence, he confessed to the 2007 murder and dismemberment of Cheryl Dunlap, saying it's time, and citing his declining health. A former Army vet and survivalist, Hilton also admitted to murdering John and Irene Bryant in North Carolina and Meredith Emerson in Georgia, victims he stalked in national forests. Though he denied being a psychopath, he admitted, "I have part of a sociopath in me." Journalist David Scott called him one of the most maniacal killers he had ever encountered. In March 2012, Hilton pleaded guilty to the murder of John and Irene Bryant. At his sentencing in U.S. District Court, he received 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 15 years for robbery. The judge made sure his federal sentence would be served after the death and life sentences he was already serving in Florida and Georgia. This ensured that Hilton would never walk free again. But even behind bars, Hilton's behavior was shocking. In interviews, he showed no emotion, no apology, no sign of humanity. He often refused to answer, and when he did, he acted like it was a burden, like the lives he took meant nothing. Law enforcement officials called his interviews some of the most disrespectful they'd ever experienced. Families of the victims were heartbroken. They came to court with photos of their loved ones, clutching onto the last pieces of their memories. But what hurt the most was Hilton's lack of remorse. No tears, no regret, just a monster hiding behind calm words and an empty stare. Our next case dives into the twisted mind of a man who smirks at his victim's pain, even during a confession.
I think these families of these women, they need justice.
Mark Riebe was once just another face in a Florida prison. Convicted for the brutal 1988 killing of a mother named Donna Callahan, he was sentenced to life. But what shocked everyone came just a year later. He started confessing to killing 12 more women. Then, just as suddenly, he took it all back. This back-and-forth game of confession and denial left families devastated and confused. Investigators believed Riebe might be one of the most dangerous serial killers in America. But without solid proof for the other cases, justice seemed out of reach. Police had suspected Riebe long before his confession. Donna Callahan was taken from her workplace in Gulf Breeze, Florida, and never made it home. Riebe's half-brother, Alex Wells, eventually broke down and told investigators what happened. He said he and Riebe kidnapped Donna. Riebe strangled her in the back seat of their car while Donna begged for the life of her little one on the way. They buried her in a shallow grave just 350 yards from Riebe's childhood home. Years later, journalist Piers Morgan sat face-to-face with Riebe in an interview that would soon turn explosive. Piers directly accused him of hiding the truth. He told Riebe he believed he killed those 12 women and that the families deserved answers. But Riebe wasn't having it. He ripped off his mic and stormed out, snapping, "You're wrong. We're done. So why confess, then recant?" Riebe claimed he made a deal with a special agent named Haley to protect his son while in prison. He said Haley promised something in return, but never delivered. He insisted the information he gave was fed to him, and that none of it was true. But not everyone bought that story. Haley, the agent, said Riebe revealed details only the real killer would know.
To this platform, did you abduct and kill Alan Ray?
Despite the lack of convictions for the other 12 women, police still believe he's behind all those killings. During the interview, Riebe tried to paint a very different picture of himself. He claimed he respected women and would never harm one, but the evidence and his own past words told a different story. Piers kept pushing. "Answer me like a man," he said. Riebe snapped. "I don't believe in putting hands on a woman," he said before walking out. For the families, the pain never ends. They're still waiting for justice, still waiting for the truth. And when someone plays games with life and death, confessing, then denying, it's not just disrespectful, it's cruel. Our next case exposes a man who weaponized trust and manipulated heartbreak, all while putting on a mask of innocence.
Just searching for random videos. Was there anything specific we said about?
Nothing specific. Is that right?
Yeah.
He seemed like just another lonely man looking for love online, but behind the soft voice and unassuming demeanor was a calculated predator. Stephen Port, nicknamed the Grinder Killer, didn't just hide behind the charm, he weaponized it. What followed was a chilling series of substance use, assaults, and killings so methodical it left even seasoned detectives shaken. In June 2014, 23-year-old Anthony Walgate was found dead outside an apartment building in Barking, London. The man who called it in was the same man who killed him, Stephen Port. He played innocent, telling people he didn't know the man. But that was just the beginning. Over the next year, 3 more men, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor, would be found dead in the same area, all within walking distance of Port's home. Shockingly, authorities didn't connect the dots. Even as victims were found in almost identical poses, police claimed there were no signs of foul play. Stephen even planted a fake suicide note on one of the bodies, blaming the previous victim's death on him. Families cried for answers. A neighbor recalled Stephen acting strange, carrying bottles of clear liquid and bags of white powder. Still, no one was arrested. Vital evidence wasn't tested. Crucial interviews were skipped. It wasn't until Anthony Walgate's death was retried in court that the truth began to surface. Forensic links, witness accounts, and a web of online dating profiles finally unraveled Port's twisted operation. He used social apps to lure his victims, secretly spiking a dangerous substance in their drinks. After taking advantage of their trust, he ended the lives of 4 men and left their bodies behind without remorse, continuing his daily life as if nothing had happened. Stephen Port lived a double life. On one hand, he was a quiet, bus-depot chef who appeared on MasterChef. On the other hand, a predator who lied about being an Oxford graduate, a Navy vet, and even a teacher.
I don't recognise his face.
So you don't recognise his face?
I do not know, no.
His motive? Control, power, and complete domination over his victims. He preyed on vulnerability, using charm and lies to gain trust before taking lives. In 2015, Port was arrested. At trial, he denied everything, even as overwhelming evidence mounted. But the jury saw through him. In 2016, he was convicted on all counts: 4 murders, multiple mistreatments, and a list of substance use and assault charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with a whole life order, meaning he will never walk free again. During interviews after his conviction, Stephen showed little emotion, no remorse, no tears. He played the victim, claiming he was misunderstood. His childlike personality made it hard to connect with people. When asked about the men he killed, he deflected. He smiled, he shrugged, he dodged questions. His behavior disgusted everyone. Even officers said they'd never seen someone so disconnected from reality and the pain they caused. For the families, justice came late. They'd begged police to investigate deeper, but were ignored until it was too late. A mother cried as she described her son's laugh. A father broke down, explaining how he knew the suicide note wasn't his boy. And for every unanswered call, every ignored clue, the pain still lingers. Stephen Port wasn't just a killer. He was a manipulator who nearly got away with it. The horrors of these serial killers unleashed were disturbing enough and left scars that will never fade. But their interviews are pure disrespect and show chilling arrogance.